interactive storytelling, right? Wrong. Now, what they've been doing is trying to mash closer and closer together, so the difference is not as apparent. But again, if you ask, what are the verbs, you'll find there are no dramatically significant verbs in these. There was one that claimed to do so. That was L.A. Noir, which isn't out yet, is it?
Yeah.
It just came out
last year.
Oh, okay. Shows you how much I know. It has this interpersonal stuff where you interrogate people, right? Ha ha ha. The way they did it was first done on a game called Murder on the Cinder Knife by Electronic Arts, published in 1984, I believe, written by John Freeman. And you did exactly the same thing as a murder mystery, and you interrogate people, but you have different styles of interrogation you can use. So, whoop-de-doo. Now, you want to ask questions that are dramatically meaningful. You want to have social interaction that's dramatically significant. And so you want verbs that are dramatically interesting. And so the games industry has failed to get story into games. They keep talking about it all the time. They've been working on it for, about 10 years now. And they've made zero progress, and that's because they don't understand what a story really is and how to, well, actually, the real problem is that game designers, they understand interactivity, but they don't know anything about story. Good storytellers know all about story, but they don't know anything about interactivity. And so they try to squish these two people together, and they get crap. What you need is somebody in one head who understands interactivity and story. Guess what she's been training you for? The merging of the two. You got to have both styles of thinking inside your head. By the way, I'm going to digress again. This two cultures thing, you know, artists and humanities versus engineers, math, science, and so forth. This is more fundamental than many people realize. Boy, this is a really long story that I'm going to try to squeeze down to about 1 minute. 600 million years ago, first animals with nervous systems appeared. They had little nervous systems that could, you know, coordinate muscles, and then they added eyes and the Cambrian explosion and all of it. It's good to know biology too. Add that to your list. Oh, and linguistics. You really need to know linguistics. See how I'm talking about verbs and such? You've got to understand linguistics. So, oh, and human evolution too. You need that. That's important. And psychology. And physics. Physics is very useful because it'll give you ideas for algorithms. And have that done by tomorrow morning. Let's see. Pardon?
In 12-point font.
Yes. Anyway, so as animals evolved into larger, more complex structures, the nervous systems had to get bigger and bigger, but above all, the nervous systems had to be able to, there was basically sensory input and motor output. You see, hear, smell things, and you want to do something about it. You know, maybe it's, run, or it's, let's go eat. In either case, it's sensory input, motor output, and sensory input takes the form of a pattern. You don't get a sensory input. There's not a little neuron that says, predator! Instead, your eyes give you this pattern of retinal imagery that you have to calculate. And it turns out you got patterns going in, but you also have patterns going out. You don't have one neuron for running. You got all these different neurons for moving the various muscles at exactly the right time and so forth. So you got patterns of input, patterns of output. Nervous systems are fundamentally what computer scientists like to call neural nets. You know, they're just in the human brain, I believe the average neuron is connected to about 100 other neurons just on output. So intensely connected. patterns go out. That pattern thinking is fundamental to all nervous systems, and our brains are set up that way. That's the fundamental structure of our brains. And if you think about it, that's what art does. Art is all pattern stuff. You're thinking about big things, the human condition, all these big things, and you're trying to turn them into some other pattern that in some way communicates some portion of that. And it's a very difficult style of thinking. It's very intense, but it is at least a vast extension of the natural thinking processes of the human brain. However, starting about, let's say 2 million years ago, hominids began developing language. And the important thing about language was that it was sequential. That is, you have a subject, verb. That, by the way, that didn't happen until maybe 150,000 years ago. In fact, sequential thinking first started with, I believe, the earliest mammals, probably about 200 million years ago. And it basically, here, let's do a barnyard experiment. We could do this at my house. You got a bunch of ducks in a pen, and you open the door to the pen, and then you go to the other side of the pen and you sprinkle lovely rain on the ground. And the ducks will all crowd up against the pen, going quack, 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 trying to get it through their, just can't reach it with their little necks, and you can laugh, ha ha ha. Now, repeat the experiment with any mammal, dog, pig, anything. They will look at it and say, oh, okay, and they go out the gate, and they go around, and they'll pick it up. Why? Because they have sequential thinking. They can think, if I move away from it at first, then I can go through the gate, then I can go through here, then I can do that, then I can reach the grain, then I can eat the grain. That's a fundamentally different style of thinking, and if you've ever, how many of you developed TTL circuits? You should do that too. You'll know that it's really difficult to come up with sequential processing. The way you have to connect all the components, it gets really complicated. And the same thing applies to neurons. That is, if neurons need to do sequential processing, they can do it, but they really, it's a real hack. And they jam them together in these huge loops, and it's complicated. It takes hundreds of neurons to do a good job with a single step, and brain doesn't do it very well, but mammals develop that capability to use for simple things. Here's another really valuable use of it. You're a little mouse, and you hear the following sequence of sounds. Boom, 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 boom. What does that mean? Large animal approaching. Hide. What if you hear boom, 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 boom? Then you can say, he's going away. And you don't have to hide. You can come out and eat food. While your stupid competitor next door, who can't think sequentially and realize the significance of the sequential relationship, he's still hiding. Isn't that great? You win. You get the food. So mammals had that, but humans really developed it big time. Language was the thing that really pushed it major. I mean, huge chunks of the brain are devoted to language comprehension, and it's all because it's sequential processing. Brain needs a lot of neurons to do sequential processing, and it still doesn't do it very well. And then the Greeks came along and invented rationalism, and later Aristotle invented logic. And if you think about it, that is sequential thinking. It is formal sequential thinking. You think about, emotions are pattern-based pattern-based thinking. With emotions, you just, I'm mad, or I'm scared, whatever. And a pattern of inputs comes in and produces a pattern of outputs instantly. See, that's why pattern thinking is so important. It yields an immediate answer. Answer might be wrong. Oh, that wasn't a dinosaur, that was just a cloud. But, better safe than sorry. Whereas the sequential reasoning doing it formally, your brain doesn't do that very well. So you really have to strain hard to do it. And so, but in fact, if you think about it, science, technology, math, all of this stuff is based on sequential reasoning, where you proceed from A to B to C to D. Programming is sequential thinking gone wild. And so, if you're going to do techie stuff, if you're going to be a techie scientist, math, engineer, anything like that, you got to master sequential thinking. You want to be a good artist, you got to master pattern thinking. These are fundamentally different, right down inside the brain. These are different ways of using your brain. That's why artists are over here and techie people are over there. They think differently. And your goal is to bring them together in one mind. Rather like you want. Your process of maturation involves bringing together all parts of yourself into one unified whole. And that's what you got to do. So, if you're strong in the arts, start working on the techie stuff. You know, spend some time in the evening relaxing with an algebra book. If you're a techie type, then you better start taking art more seriously. Start exploring it. Oh, great book, Borston's book, The Creators. Wonderful book about the history of art. Anyway, well, that was that long spiel. Was there something I was supposed to undigress to? Was that a digression from a digression from a digression? Oh, yes, that's right.
So we started the conversation